What's up, guys? Welcome to Off Field. I'm Nate Jackson. That guy, you're about to see him, Brandon Krisztal. I promise you're going to see him. This show is brought to you by Trusted American Mortgage. How would you like to get into a better interest rate and lower your monthly payment? Go to trustedamerican.com and find out how much they can save you today.
Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
That's right. Welcome to the show. It is Monday. I am Nathan Jackson. This is Brandon Krisztal. Fresh off the combine, and we're going to break things down, Broncos, all things Broncos, recap the combine, talk about free agency, get into what the Broncos have on their plate. But first, what do you got on your plate, man? How are you, Brandon?
I'm doing good.
Is that a fresh haircut I see?
It is. It is a truly fresh haircut.
Wow.
I was at the hair salon today.
Salon.
Well, stylist.
Salon style. Salon
she has
hair.
her own little thing. So she's
Okay.
I guess it is a collection of single hair salon booths.
How long you been going to this particular stylist?
Since I moved to that side of town, southwest side of town, so 7.5 years now.
Oh,
Just
loyal customer.
randomly met her at Floyd's, and then she moved out on her own. But
Who's Floyd?
Floyd's barbershop.
Friend of yours? Oh,
That Floyd's.
Oh, yeah.
She went out on her own, but she went to high school with our pal Tyler Columbus.
Was that
At
right?
Creek. Because when I told her I did, she's like, "Oh, do you know Tyler Columbus?" I'm like, "Yeah, we work together, whatever." And she's like, "Yeah, we went to Creek together." And then in college, she dated one of our bridesmaids' now husband.
Wow. Fun fact.
Fun fact. But
Well, you
good
look very
haircut,
handsome.
feeling good.
And we're going to get into the combine and how it went on for the Broncos and the things you saw. But how did it go for you, man? Did you have a good time?
I did. I think it's one of my favorite weeks of the year because of the people you end up meeting and the conversations you have, and maybe people that you haven't talked to as much. And you never really know when you're going to be in a conversation with someone who's on a coaching staff and they're the quality control person, or who's a personnel scouting director that's 2 or 3 years away from becoming a GM. Things happen fast in the NFL in some instances. Not for every coach. It took Vic Fangio 30 years to become a head coach, 35 years, but it took someone like Sean McVay even less. And so, well, not even less. It took Sean McVay 8 years, so, or whatever it was. So just getting to know people, talking to people, meeting more agents, a little bit of interaction with some of the players. Talked to Tez Johnson for a few minutes just in the hallway and passing, Bo's little brother.
So what are the settings in which you meet these people? Is it at a restaurant? Is it like at some facility, some convention center out on the field? Where are you talking to these interesting people?
So the reason the combine works, there's a number of reasons. They've got a hospital where they've invested in all this MRI technology and imaging and CAT scan. So they can handle 350 kids over a 4-day span. No other medical facility in the country has that because they aren't built for it. But then you have these big hotels, this JW Marriott and all these other little Spring Hill suites behind it, then a regular Marriott, then a Westin, then a Hyatt, that are all connected to the big Indiana Convention Center. And you walk into that hallway, and then you can get to the big conference rooms or whatever they're called, ballers where the media stuff's going on.
Yeah.
Walk past that. That gets you to where there's a player workout area to just get ready. You walk down the hallway. You can stay underground. You never have to go outside if you didn't want to. If it was a blizzard, wouldn't affect you at all. And you get to Lucas Oil, where they now have all the team meetings. They used to have it at one of the other hotels that's connected, this Omni, where the players stay. But they would just rip out like beds from the hotel room. Everybody be in a hotel room. Now they do it in a nice big suite, and you still only have the 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is. But so Indy's, everything is right there, walkable within a couple of blocks, or stay inside. So you can run into people as they're at the Starbucks by, in the JW or the regular Marriott. That's where our friends Ian Rappaport and Jordan Schultz got into a shouting match.
Oh, did they?
They did.
Over
they
what?
Did. Oh, you didn't see that? Oh,
That
that
is
was a big
awesome.
story last week.
Really?
No, it was a big story over the Matt Stafford, Tom Brady, and the reporting of it.
Wow.
Folks were calling it a source off. There's
Wow.
Pro Football Talk. Mike Florio kind of wrote it all up. Ian said as much when he went on Pat McAfee's show. But Jordan, who is really good at his job, but takes plenty of heat because his dad founded Starbucks and he's worth a couple $1 billion. So why does he care about Matt Stafford and Tom Brady meeting, or Darius Slay, who just got cut right before this show started, like breaking that news versus Adam and Ian, who But he takes his job just as seriously as them. And the difference is he's got an inheritance of a couple $2 billion coming his way.
And they had the shouting match at Starbucks?
So the Starbucks is like a hotel kiosk Starbucks, but
Poetic.
at Starbucks basically. And so there's a picture of Jordan.
My dad owns that place.
Well, and I gave him a hard time 2 years ago because I'm like, they closed the Starbucks at 4 when every coach and GM and team personnel are staying at this hotel, walking by it. They're going to be in meetings till 11.
Yeah.
I was like, can't you make a call or show them a card and be like, hey, y'all need to stay open?
Yeah.
But he was, pointing out something.
He doesn't have that kind of pull.
Doesn't have that kind of pull because anyway. So that's kind of a junction
So
point.
those are some of the little dramas that are going on around.
Yeah,
there,
for sure. But that's kind of a junction point because you have all these hotels meeting at that, the small hotels plus the big JW. Then there's another Starbucks at the other Marriott in that lobby. They're literally a quarter mile apart, not even an eighth of a mile apart, a block apart. And so that's where you can talk to people. You'll meet. Some people have set meetings. Some people just run into people. You can talk to people kind of walking through the hallway because they keep all the autograph seekers in one little corner.
Yeah.
And so that allows you, if you see somebody you know or see somebody you want to talk to, you're walking the same way they're walking. So you end up walking with them and shooting the breeze for 5-10 minutes. Last year, I ran into Sean Payton and was walking as he was going into the workouts on one of the days and ended up on NFL Network just walking with Sean Payton last year. So it's that. And then at night, there's these handful of restaurants people are at, these couple of bars, and you can drink till 3 in Indy. So people are out late. And some places will even stay open past that with a wink from the city or whatever it is.
Well, they make so much money during that time.
Exactly.
The city absolutely loves it. You think about, I was making the argument that the combine doesn't need to exist, but if you were to end the combine, you end these revenue streams for the entire city.
$10 million a year.
Wow.
And it goes through next year is the contract. The league keeps talking about opening it up. Nobody else in the league other than the league office wants to move it, including people in the league office don't really want to move it.
Okay. All right. So we're about to get into this first quarter, which is talking about the Broncos and the way they're viewed nationally and kind of by the entire league. Before we do that, real quick, I just want to ask Brandon, what was the most interesting conversation you had at the combine?
A couple of them I can't even really get into.
Can't tell them. Secret.
Can't tell.
Top secret.
But I did find out from some personnel people that haven't necessarily finalized their staffs. If someone wasn't hired, so Mike Borgonzi gets a job in Tennessee, if he doesn't, and he hired Dave Ziegler as his assistant GM, the former GM of the Raiders with Josh McDaniels. They've been friends for a long time, both Boston guys or New England guys. And so Dave is now there. Dave wasn't with the team. You can hire people with the team like right away because George Payton's nephew, Robbie Payton, who was here before George got here even, he went with Darren Muji, with Muj to the Jets. But if they don't go like in that first quick hiring cycle, if there's anybody that's in a building right now that might get a promotion because one of the people they know got a job somewhere, you're not getting it till after the draft, because once the draft boards are set and they start to get into the meat of free agency, you can't be sharing state secrets until those processes play out. So that was, I found that out from somebody that I didn't know the timing on that. No one at this point is going to be hired anywhere until after the draft.
All right. Hey, each year you go, you learn a little more, Brandon. We're going to await that book that you're going to write someday. Someday. You should. Hey, it's never
Tales of the Combine.
Yeah. Or just tales of covering sports, or, going to all the Combine, the Super Bowl, all the things that you do. We'd love to hear more about it.
It still beats working for a living, as I like to say.
Hey, playing in the toy aisle, though.
Exactly.
But the biggest tantrums happen in the toy aisle. And they happen in sports talk as well.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
Evidenced by the shouting match you just mentioned there.
Over something pretty silly.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it. The first quarter. How the Broncos, the way they're viewed throughout the league. Obviously, things have changed a lot over the last couple of years for the Broncos. They got their owner in place. They got their coach in place. They got their quarterback in place. And finally, they can start to build around that quarterback and improve on the 10-7 record they had last year, winning 10 games for the first time in almost a decade. No longer a laughing stock, no longer just having everything go wrong. The Broncos seem to be having some things go right. How are they viewed throughout the league from the people you talk to?
Well, and it's funny, too, because going back a year ago, and we've talked about this a bunch, I think, even when we just started this show last summer, the reverence people have for Sean Payton and what he was able to do in New Orleans all those years. And yes, he had Drew Brees, but you realize they do work hand in hand. Because it's so hard to keep a job in the NFL, and there's only a handful of people that will keep the same job they have for especially the highest levels, head coach, GM. There's only a handful of those guys. Like Rick Spielman kept a job for 14 years with the Vikings, or Kevin Colbert with the Steelers. Those jobs, unless you own the team like Jerry Jones, they just turn over, right? Even if it's 5 years, 8 years, 10 years. And so Sean winning as much as he did, doing what he did on offense, the league was like, oh, they'll get it figured out. He'll get one of these quarterbacks. A lot of people, Chris Sims being maybe the loudest, like Bo Nix is the perfect Sean Payton quarterback. He's smart. He's going to do everything he wants him to. He's got a good arm. His arm's better than Drew's. Okay. Chris said all that a year ago. Now fast forward to enough people saw it. And it took people a while to change their narrative on Bo Nix. And some people didn't want to even at the end of the year.
Some people still have it.
They still have it, even after the data is now clearly different than it was a year ago or when he left Auburn. Like some people just think he's a guy at Auburn.
Or even data, schmata, watch the games.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And
see what's going on.
Because I think you and I, neither of us were overly critical of the pick or him taking the starting job. I just don't know if we were Bo leavers from day one because we wanted to see him play more. And once he did, you're like, okay, he's passed the eye test. And that's the most important thing. So because they now have Bo in place, they are in a much different position than they've been in really since Peyton Manning got here, where they're just filling in holes. And they're in that magic window of he's on a rookie deal. They get past the bulk of the Russell Wilson money. And now they've got some cap room to play with in free agency because of how their cap is set up. And next year they have a ton of cap room.
Yeah.
As it stands now, over $100 million in available cap space today, but that's going to change, obviously. And so everyone's looking at him like, even though Sean and George were both quick to say, you don't just pick up where you left off in terms of, hey, you're not automatically a playoff team again. So let's now try to win a couple more playoff games and knock on the Super Bowl door. And so they are right, but you really can draft best player available if you're stuck at 20 and you don't end up maneuvering. And even though we think they need a running back, a tight end, and linebacker help, we'll see what happens in free agency. But that they can go so many different directions that if there's a corner at 20 that's the highest on their board, maybe they take a corner and move Riley Moss inside.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, Riley's a really good player, but he's also been hurt pretty frequently. And, you're always – look, the guy opposite Pat Surtain is always going to have a lot of action every single game. And so can you withstand that action? And so if there's a guy who just they love – they'll probably draft him, right? You're always going to get replaced at some point. They're always looking to replace you. That doesn't mean that they would cut Riley. He would still have an opportunity to beat out this dude in camp, right? And then people get hurt all the time. So you can never have too many corners.
He'd also have a chance to beat out Jaquan McMillan,
right?
Who I think had a better year 2 years ago than last year. He wasn't bad, but
yeah, I
think you can see that he's limited, especially against a team like the Bengals.
So has the view of the Broncos really come down to Sean Payton and Bo Nix? Because prior to last year, PFF had this roster graded the very last roster in the league, the number 32 roster in the entire NFL, the worst. So that's not just Bo Nix. That's everybody else. Has the view changed? I mean, obviously the defense, top 3, top 5 defense. So is the view, who's talking about the defense out there? Was it all just Bo?
No,
Sean?
plenty of people and plenty of people that really know football talked about Vance and what a good coach he is.
Yeah.
I talked with one exec with the team. It's like, man, Vance is a hell of a coach. Like that defense was rolling. And what we both said though was it's not that they're not a good roster. They just weren't necessarily well known.
Not proven.
Nick Bonito wasn't a household name.
Yeah.
JFM was on that list of really good players that didn't make the Pro Bowl. But if you were watching the Jets, maybe he wasn't the one that jumped off the screen because he had Sauce and Garrett Wilson and the Williams brothers and all that. Is that right there? The Williams? Is it Williams?
Which Williams?
They're brothers, the D lineman and the linebacker. I'm drawing a blank. The Jets. Quinnen and Quentin Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Williams brothers. So you had those other guys that might have taken a little more attention from JFM. Same with Zach Allen. Not a lot of attention. We saw him play hard.
Yeah.
Put those dudes together. You add Malcolm Roach to the mix,
who
had never really done much, but just changes the whole makeup of that room with his personality. And DJ Jones playing better back at nose. Linebacker, you weren't exactly sure. You had Alex Singleton. And then obviously he gets hurt. But I understand why PFF did it. I guess you got to rank somebody somewhere. But it was more just them not knowing Riley Moss would be able to step in and play as well as he did before he got hurt. Not knowing much about the receivers other than Cortland, but Devon Vele and Troy Franklin coming on, Marvin Mims being unlocked as a weapon. So and then the O-line didn't play great with Mike McGlinchey and Ben Powers after giving them all that money. But you realize some of that was maybe on the quarterback.
Yeah. So Broncos over the last 10 years prior to Sean Payton getting here, 3 coaches, quarterbacks getting cycled in and out, just bad luck. And so do you think that it's basically the stability that Sean Payton brings, the track record that he has, that has changed the way people view the Broncos?
Yeah, I think it is. And you look at his staff. You have guys that have been hired other places. You have guys that they wanted to hire away. People want to talk to Jim Leonard. I think he made him an associate head coach. They wanted to maybe steal Zach Strief, make him an OC or something. He's now an associate head coach. You have a bunch of associate head coaches. And then also the stability, though, with George and his staff and how well he's drafted.
Yeah.
Maybe they haven't always hit home runs on free agency, but I don't know if they've had glaring misses, and guys like Brandon Jones end up becoming a steal.
Yeah. I mean,
the trade for JFM is a steal.
Yeah. What was the edge rusher guy? Randy Gregory.
Gregory, but that came with red flags all over the place. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, he's finally going to figure it out. It's like,
No.
let's take a chance.
Yeah.
And they made it.
And then Russell, of course. But those are the big two
And
misses.
I don't think there's anybody that the Russ is the biggest miss, but I don't think there's anybody that wouldn't have done it. Maybe they don't give him that deal right away, but that was kind of understood.
Yeah.
But then also Greg
and
Penner,
a huge lesson learned as well.
for sure. And Greg Penner's involvement, he is not only well respected, everyone is finding out about how much he's willing to put resources towards everything football, from changing the plane to changing how they travel, brand new practice facility.
What do you mean changing the plane?
They changed planes a couple of years ago to a customized plane that's all first class seats the whole way through.
Wow.
So that was a Sean Payton thing. They basically retrofitted a cargo jet, and everybody has a first class seat. I've heard the Wi-Fi isn't as great as some people, but other people said they stream games on there. So
and you can do without the Wi-Fi for a couple hours, can't you? Or people can't. These days.
They like watching games. And when you're flying on Saturdays and Sundays, your favorite college team's playing or the game after you want to watch it.
Yeah. Okay.
But those are the types of things, and knowing that a new stadium is likely. So you've got the ownership, which is as big a key as anything. Goofy ownership, crappy ownership, to downright, just not knowing what to do, lost ownership is going to mess with a team. Or if they think they know too much and are interfering with their football people, and the Broncos don't have any of that. And so because of it, plus Sean Payton's track record, I think that they are very, very highly regarded.
Yeah, the Broncos ownership, not just rich for an owner, they're rich for anyone. They're the Waltons are the top 10 richest people in the world, on the planet. I don't know how many billions. It's like 70,
65,
80.
78. It seems to always go up.
Yeah.
And they're the richest owners in the NFL, second richest in pro sports. And we're talking about the Walton Penner family group specifically, not even their relatives, because the Cronkies would fall into that same umbrella. But Paul Allen is the only person that has more money than Rob Walton. And
he does?
According to the internet. I think he was at like 80 billion and it was at 70, or whatever. If they needed to borrow some from some of the other Waltons, then it would surpass that.
Yeah. Well, the Broncos are on the up and up. And let's move into the second quarter here with a little breakdown of the combine.
Yep.
The winners and the losers, the buzz there in Indianapolis. Brandon, what did you see?
You saw nobody break Xavier Worthy's 40 time, despite at least a dozen to 20 players saying they were going to run.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They're like, oh, we're going after Xavier. Like,
what is the record?
4.22.
4.22 in the 40.
That's what he ran last year.
What would you run in the 40 right now, Brandon?
5.1.
5.1.
5.2.
Right.
I ran a 4.67 back in the day.
No, you didn't.
I did.
No, there's no chance.
Definitely a chance.
Prove it.
Well, I guess we could.
4.67.
Yeah.
A 30 or a 40?
40.
Oh, who timed you?
The coaches at Golden West College in Orange County.
4.67. That's faster than a lot of NFL players, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean,
you were that kind of an athlete, and so it's good to know that.
I should have played soccer. I should have stuck with soccer.
You never played soccer? Or
I did from age 3 to 7, and then got burned out.
You got burned out by 7.
Then found out that my dad was a great soccer player, and I just didn't realize it because he played sweeper.
You played at age 3?
Yeah, maybe it was a little early.
Yeah, 3-year-old soccer teams?
Yeah, and it's 11 on 11 back then in the
3
early. Dude, I swear, I was 3.5 or whatever. I turned 4 March 31st, and the leagues in Texas start March 1st or whatever. So I was 3 and 11 months, but I was still 3.
So does the buzz around the 40, is that kind of wearing off a little bit?
I think so. But the most fascinating is Tez Johnson, Bo Nix's little brother, adopted brother, but we'll make it easy, call him his little brother. And he is his little brother. He's 5'9.5". He weighs 154 pounds, the lightest player at the combine by a mile, maybe the lightest player at the combine in a long time. No one could guard him at the Senior Bowl. He had a really good couple of years in Oregon after transferring from maybe like Liberty or wherever he was somewhere. But 2 good years at Oregon, good on punt return, flip on the tape, and you're like, no one's touching this kid. He runs a 4.51, and everyone's like, whoa, okay. So he's light, and he's small, and he doesn't run a fast 40. But then all the other drills, including 3-cone shuttle and the receiver drills, he was clocked as the fastest player in those drills. So,
Well, it just shows you that football speed is different from the straight line speed that, determines the 40 time.
Well, so all the years you played in the NFL, you had different fast guys. But you played with Darrent Williams, who probably didn't lose too many races to anybody. I'm trying to think.
Ashley Lee was really fast.
Ashley Lee,
I think he
super
ran a 4.2 coming out, 4.29 or 4.3 something. He was
one
of the fastest receivers in the draft. And his speed showed up on the field, but he wasn't, he didn't have a lot of longevity, and his route running was probably not as polished as someone who's a little slower, who's a little more in control. Sometimes the super fast guys, they don't run under control when they're trying to run routes. And look, when you're running routes as a receiver, you are never at top speed ever, unless you're just running a go route. And that happens, but at the same time, like, you never run an unimpeded go route. They're trying to, get in front of you. You're having to change, use hand fighting and change your direction a little bit.
Unless the defense is so bad and the corner misses,
you're just running around.
Yeah.
But it's so few and far between that having that be your only weapon is just not enough to be a successful football player. And so, the 40 seems to be losing a little mustard.
Yeah, I imagine that. But I guess kind of what I was getting at was the level of trash talk. Like, I'm sure Rod Smith looked at Ashley Lee and was never like, well, this kid runs a super fast 40, so I should be worried that he's a better receiver than me. So everything at the combine, they'll tell you, is all about information. Like, it's a metric. So the 40 matters, and that it's one box that needs to be.
Yeah, Paul Schaefer saying they should have people diving at their legs while running the 40. I think that's a good idea. Or have bags they have to jump over. Or like,
I've always just thought run every single drill in pads, because you and I have watched the NFL for a long time, and I know that they didn't always have great pads. They didn't used to have face masks or really good helmets, but they've always had some sort of padding on.
Yeah.
So I get that the times are all skewed, but they play every game in pads. So just do everything in pads.
Yeah.
Shoulder pad, a helmet at least, for every drill.
Well, the thing is, too, these guys have been training for this with specific coaches who adjust their technique to improve the time. But that technique adjustment kind of takes you away from the football stuff, and maybe you lose a little bit of your football technique, right? Because the 40 alone, the first 10 yards of a 40, you would be amazed at how much coaching and technical perfection goes into just that first 10 yards, the angle of the arm, the feet, your butt level and all that stuff, and the way you come out of the blocks. And, it's very, very detailed, so much so that you forget what you're doing here. You're a football player. You're not a track star.
No, that's where guys with track backgrounds tend to do well in that, because they know how to start. They know how to stay low out of their stance or out of the blocks. And so that's why oftentimes track stars or guys with track backgrounds fare well. Like, we don't have to go look it up, but I'm sure we could find Xavier Worthy running the 100 in Texas at some point and probably winning some races.
Yeah.
Trendon Holiday is one of the fastest guys any of us have ever seen. There's video of him winning the national championship in the outdoor in the 100. So that matters. Catching the ball matters. Like Will Howard, the quarterback at Ohio State, he's coming off a national championship where he played great in the playoffs, and then he's missing guys on slant routes. Like, well, that's not helping him at all. It's like, well, okay, but in a game where he has NFL, I'm not saying these aren't NFL receivers, where he's going to have NFL receivers. I don't know if Will Howard's going to be good or not, but he had NFL receivers, an NFL O-line, and NFL running backs at Ohio State. And he looked pretty damn good. And he looked good when he had to run the ball for first downs.
Yeah.
So I think good evaluators take every piece of information, but ultimately it's about the tape and about your interaction with them and hearing about their interaction with teammates and coaches.
Yeah, the combine, throwing at the combine is tricky for a quarterback because you have receivers who get coached up by different coaches. So you have a group of receivers. And the good thing about it when you're on a team is all those receivers are getting coached up the exact same way and are going to be in the exact same spot at the exact same time. You're talking about running a slant. Teams run slants differently. Some do it, 3 steps, so your inside foot's up, 1, 2, 3, break. Some do it 4 steps. Some do it, try to target 5 yards. Some it's about the steps. And so when everyone's getting coached the same way, the quarterback knows where they're going to be. And when it's a bunch of dudes who come in for the day, you see what happened there. And so he kind of takes a hit there.
That's why everybody looks okay on go routes, because
you're
just approximating distance and you're looking at the guy's speed. But
even the go route's funny because some teams will take inside stems or some receivers will take inside stems and then go out. Some guys will go straight down the track. Some guys will end up, a certain yardage from the sideline. Quarterbacks are taught to throw basically, I don't know. What is that? What is their spot? Anyway, everyone's taught a little bit different.
Right.
And so you can actually take a back step at the combine, or at least perception wise, from not being able to hit those.
And if any evaluator thinks, oh, well, Will Howard threw slant routes behind these guys, but kept hitting Ibuka, well, you're like, okay, I think in games where it matters,
His own receiver.
Yeah, his own. I'm saying,
yeah.
If he can get it to Ibuka with defense, with Michigan's corner on him, or with whoever they played in the playoffs, then I think we're at Georgia. I think we're okay if you can do it. That's a bunch of NFL guys on Georgia.
Yeah.
So I like his chances. I'm just saying that some guys can help themselves with great workouts. Matthew Golden from Texas, who looks really good when you put the tape on, then he goes out and runs a 4.29. You're like, okay, and you got people saying he's going to be the first receiver taken. That maybe he's at the top of the list now. And so that can certainly happen, where that's one more thing that you didn't necessarily know that he was that fast. You could watch Texas play and see Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning throwing him the ball. But I think about the speed and the running backs now. They have draft eligible quarterbacks, but guys that aren't talking to teams necessarily.
Yeah.
They'll invite a couple of seniors, super seniors, to just come throw at the combine and be around it all. And so they're not having Will Howard throw to the running backs because they're working out on different days. But Will Howard, the kid from Virginia Tech is running a wheel route, basically, out of the backfield and up. And he has to wait for the ball to get around 4.35 or whatever the fastest running back was. It didn't look like he was waiting forever. But you could tell he had to throttle down for the ball to come.
Yeah.
Because it's the first time this guy's ever thrown to him ever.
Yeah.
So yeah, the combine workouts are a little silly.
And coaches know that.
Yeah, they do.
What about was there any moments, wow moments from any of these guys? Because sometimes, remember Myles Garrett, he kind of absolutely crushed it. Was there any combine warriors who just stood head and shoulders above the rest, or any single moments that were blew everyone's socks off?
The tackle from Missouri that ran 4.91 at 322 pounds.
Wow.
And he was already
not as fast as you, though.
Maybe faster.
No.
Oh,
you ran a 4.67.
No, I mean today.
You would have blown him out of the water.
I'm saying today 4.67, but I'm saying I ran 4.67, 4.69, so I ran it twice. Just saying. It's a long time ago. I'm gonna be 47 in a couple weeks, so
I still don't believe you.
Okay, I don't know how to prove.
There's no way you can.
Okay, but there's no
cool.
way. There's no way you could also be right.
We can't prove each other wrong.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I'm drawing a blank on the kid's name, but the tackle from Missouri,
that's moving.
4.91's moving for just about anybody that isn't like a tailback or a corner.
Yeah, you rarely see the lineman go under 5.
Yeah. And so to see a guy at 322, he's not 285, he's got to put some weight on.
Right.
He's a center, No, this dude's going to play tackle in the league at 322, and he's 6'5", and to run 4.91, that's picking him up and putting him down.
You just forget how good athletes these guys are because they're so big, and you just think, oh, that's just a big fat guy. No, he's really good. He's a really good athlete, and nowhere in no other sport can an athlete like that thrive. There's no room for a guy like that on a basketball court or a baseball diamond or a hockey rink,
ice,
or the ice. And that's what makes football unique, man. Every body type, every size, there's a position for you. And so you got a group of 53 guys, and you got guys who are 330 pounds. And you got guys like Tez Johnson, who's 130 pounds, and they're all on the same team, moving in the same direction. It's a beautiful sport for that reason. And I think people identify with it no matter what their body type is.
Sorry, I got to get this kid right. Armand Membu.
Okay.
6'4" and change, 332.
Yeah.
4.91 last year in 411 pass snaps. 0 sacks allowed, 0 QB hits allowed.
All right.
87.5 run block grade. He's a big kid.
Big boy.
Armand Membu, and here he is.
Armand Membu.
Rolling.
We'll be looking out for Armand Membu.
Yeah, and so he's a guy that probably had whatever his grade is. We'll call it a second, third round, or maybe he's now a late first, second round, or whatever it is. Maybe he's mid-first round. Performances like that, when your athleticism is so off the charts and you have good tape in the SEC, then all it does is okay, we need to. Because what I know is teams have 2 different boards. They have a front draft board and then a back board ends up being their final board. So their front board set before they get to the combine with all the info from scouts and personnel people and Senior Bowl and Shrine Game and all that. And then they get back from the combine, start to go through the pro days, and then set the board still way before the draft. So you're like, well, why wouldn't you move it? Why wouldn't you just keep setting it until the day of the draft? You're like, now it's finally set. But they keep it set, and maybe so that they don't fall victim to groupthink or whatever. So yeah, we'll see what that performance did for that kid.
Yeah, we'll see. And the combine's finally over. These guys can move on to the next phase in their off season, and they're hopeful, hopefulness that they're going to end up on a team they're going to thrive. Some news came down, though. We're going to move into halftime of this program. Some news came down over the weekend. Not our pal, But
Pal adjacent.
Deebo Samuel, ended up in Washington with the Commanders. Brandon, why didn't the Broncos make a move and make that trade? It seemed like something they could definitely manage.
They certainly could have. They have a good relationship with the Niners front office, great relationship with the Niners front office, and have obviously made deals in the past, even when it was different people making those decisions. But the sense I got talking to people in the know was the fact that he's never played a full season and that he's been so banged up over the last handful of years that even as dynamic as he is when he's healthy with the ball, it's not worth the risk and with the new dollars that would likely have to come on a new contract. Whereas you look at Washington with the rookie quarterback and a boatload of cap room, they can make that move. They make the playoffs. They win a playoff game. They've got the rookie QB. They've got a creative play caller with Cliff Kingsbury. You've got Terry McLaurin to stretch the defense. That now you give them another weapon. That just made more sense for them, but the Broncos were never in the Deebo conversation, really. I think they had it very quickly internally and then moved on.
Do you think it was his podcast?
I don't think it was his podcast. I don't think that was the deciding factor one way or the other.
Well, the Broncos could use a player like Deebo.
I think everybody could when he's healthy.
No, but the Broncos especially need someone who breaks tackles, someone who could play between the hashes, someone who can play a lot of different positions. He's like the Joker.
He's the most Joker player probably in the NFL right now.
Right. And Sean Payton wanted a Joker. Wouldn't you take a chance on it, knowing the potential and what you've seen from that guy? If you can find a way, and the Broncos are really good at keeping guys healthy, right? More so than most other teams. Wouldn't you think, hey, we can keep him healthy, we can get the most out of Deebo, and he's going to take our team up a notch?
I think that they gave it consideration, went through all the factors, I'm sure did their research, and then were never really in the market. I think they like Marvin Mims, and even though they're not the exact same player, they kind of used him all over the place. They line up in the backfield, they just hand him the ball or toss him the ball, and then certainly throw it to him out of the backfield, and then lining him up in the slot and setting him in motion and all that. Do you like calling it jet sweep motion or orbit motion? Which do you prefer?
Not orbit.
Yeah, it's too intergalactic for you.
I just never heard it called that.
Okay, I don't know, some teams call it that, but
when they go and then they come back behind the thing.
Yeah, do you like jet sweep or fly sweep? What do you have a preference?
Fly sweep is what I used to hear.
Okay.
But I mean, the terms evolve.
Yeah,
but the action is the same.
Yeah, the action is the same. But so you're going to use Marvin Mims like that. They're going to try to figure out how to get more out of Troy Franklin. That's why it makes the Tez Johnson thing, going back to that, a little unlikely here. But then you think, okay, San Francisco, if they don't trade Ayuk, we now hear that they're open to trading him again.
Ayuk?
Yeah, coming out. That was reported this weekend that they're open to it. I mean, you're one of the $30 million extension.
Who's going to trade for a guy who just had that injury?
I don't know. Who's going to trade for Kirk Cousins? Nobody. But like, the Falcons say, oh, we're holding on to him. Like, okay, great. Hold on to him.
Yeah.
We're not going to trade for him because we don't want to pay that stupid contract.
Yeah.
But we'll sign him for $1 million if you cut him. Tez Johnson with like Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, or Mike McDaniel. It's like, watch out. Or if he ended up in Washington also, I think Tez Johnson will end up being a weapon that here makes a little less sense because you have Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin.
All right, well, let's move into the third quarter here, and we're going to talk about, that's right, the CU and the CSU, Colorado kids at the Combine.
And some actual Colorado kids.
What do you mean, like children?
The tight end from Cherry Creek that played at Texas.
Yeah.
That sprains his ankle, then does all the drills, and then sends out a picture of how he sprained his ankle coming out of the blocks in the 40.
Wow.
Finished the race. I don't think it was great. And then did every single drill, and then sent out Gunnar Helm, played for Dave Logan at Creek. And I guess if the math is right, probably won a championship. Because Dave's won 5 of the last 6.
Yeah.
So unless he was a 6-year senior.
Right.
So Gunnar Helm and also Terrence Ferguson, who played at Oregon, is a local kid too. But then you have the CU kids, and that was fun because it's been a minute since there's been a lot of buffs at the Combine.
Yeah.
And you got some headliners for sure.
Yeah, we'll talk about that buff energy because, you got your Heisman winner. You got Shedeur Sanders up there being like,
He was ready. He was like the mayor. He was ready to take on all questions.
Yeah.
He's like, I know I can turn the team around.
Yeah, I change the culture anywhere I go. Like, all right, Shedeur.
Okay.
The question is, are the teams going to like that sort of braggadocio, or would they want something more understated?
I think it depends on the personality and can you back it up. And he was a big part of it. Like if Shiloh came in and said that to teams, like, oh, we changed the culture at Jackson State and we changed the culture. And so you're like,
But
well,
didn't Coach Prime change the culture?
sure,
Didn't
but I'm
his
saying,
dad change it? Now, I'm not saying he didn't play great because he did. He's
absolutely.
But and you know, the Buffs didn't win a national championship.
No, but he was Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year and threw for 4,000 yards and all those touchdowns and threw for a bunch of yards and a bunch of touchdowns last year. And so he's shown against good Pac-12 competition last year, solid Big 12 competition this year, that he can handle that level of football. And so I reached out to a couple of teams that I know he met with, and they said that he was good in person because I think when you're that kid, similar to, started the show talking about Jordan Schultz can do whatever he wants, but he wants to cover the NFL and the NBA as an insider.
Yeah.
Shedeur didn't have to, he doesn't have to love the game as much as he clearly loves the game. Like, he's financially well off from the day he's born, and he's obviously made money in college.
But isn't Coach Prime famous for not giving him a lot of money and not treating him that way, making him work for it?
Within reason, in that he still lived in his house. He still got to fly.
Yeah, but he doesn't have millions in his own bank account.
No, but he's also not worried about keeping the lights on or where the next meal's coming from, kind of thing. And so I think that changes the way you can look at the world when you have some sort of something comfortable to fall back on.
So you think, like, the kids from a rougher background who have less are hungrier when it comes to football?
Sometimes some of them just aren't wired that way, but the ones that come from means and still love football, and you look at a guy that is right down the street from us and Peyton Manning, he certainly didn't have to worry about anything growing up when his dad's an NFL quarterback for 14, 15 years. But anyone that's ever been around Peyton, whether he's doing a commercial or coaching Pop Warner or getting ready to play a football game, there's nobody more prepared than Peyton Manning. That the work is as important to him as anything else. And when you talk to people close to Shedeur, you find out that football matters to him more than any of the other stuff. The two legendary brand and all that. And his point was, there's a lot of hours in the day. Like, you can do a lot of football and still do a lot of other stuff. And he's right. But now he'll just do even more football because he'll be in the building with his quarterback's coach, with his OC. But the sense I got talking to the teams that are in the quarterback market and are near the top of the draft, if not all the way at the top, they enjoyed their interactions with them. The Titans, with their new GM Mike Borgonzi and with Brian Callahan, as soon as Mike took that job, he was at the East-West Shrine game in Dallas like 2 days later watching Shedeur and all those Buffs work out. So he's been around them some. I'm not saying the Titans are going to take him at 1. There's a world where they might trade back and still take him, potentially, depending on who wanted to jump up for maybe Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Travis because, he was up there kind of overwhelmed by the moment, didn't give a lot of answers to the media, but that doesn't matter when you're a football player. You got to play well, and he did. He's a Heisman Trophy winner. What's the buzz around Travis, and what do you think is going to happen for him?
I think that someone's going to get an awesome football player, but you can't really get a sense of if anyone loves him.
Yeah.
And I think that's because they know they need to figure out how to use him on both sides of the ball. I'm not saying that they don't love the talent.
Okay, if he was just a single side player, if he was just a corner, would he be a top 10 pick?
I think so. I think I talked to someone who I know with an organization that is very much in charge of a draft board and said they had him in the top 10 on offense and like 11th or 12th on defense.
Okay.
Like when they're just rating receivers and just rating corners.
Yeah.
He's right there, top.
Wait, top 10 receiver or top 10 offensive player?
Top 10. Top 10. If he was just a receiver,
he'd be in the top 10.
He's be in the top 10. And if he's just a corner, he'd be just outside the top 10.
Okay, so he will be a top 10 player.
So he's going to be a top 10 player. But you have to get creative with how you use him. And is he a full-time corner or a full-time receiver? And everyone kind of agrees that full-time corner is easier to manage, but full-time receiver with specific man stuff. And he likely would spend more time in the meeting room than even a Troy Brown did in his time with New England, where out of necessity, they had to make him play corner. And it is still a time management thing. I know that I'm not trying to be dismissive of being in those meetings with your teammates, but especially if you're full-time corner and then you get to be in the meeting with an extra meeting with the quarterbacks, because Tuesdays quarterbacks still come in and get a jump on the game plan. So if every Tuesday Travis Hunter's in there with his quarterback, then he's going to be ahead of the receivers Wednesday when they're doing the install. He's going to already.
Yeah, he will, but he also so there's so much learning that happens in the meetings when you're watching other guys make mistakes and you're going through the film of practice and, I'm watching you run a route and then I'm hearing you get coached up on the things you didn't do right. He's not going to be there for that. And so that's my concern with him playing both ways, is that he's not going to learn as much as he would if he was just doing one. He's going to, and look, it might take 2, 3, 4 years of playing both ways to finally be, in his bag on both sides of the ball. But will the teams have that patience, and because what you don't want to do is put out a lackluster effort and then get labeled as a bust, and then you can't do that, and then you get demoralized, and then the coaches don't believe in you anymore. The NFL is a different beast. He is clearly a different beast.
Yeah,
well.
That whole idea seems extremely implausible, with knowing how much he loves football and how they had to save him from himself.
Wait, what do you
in
mean?
Practice?
Because there's a lot of guys who love football, Brandon.
No,
it doesn't
but,
mean you're gonna.
No, but
that the love alone is gonna make it good.
No, but getting in and on film study and seeing tendencies and.
No, but what I'm saying is you're in there with your coach and your players and your teammates,
Yeah, but
and that's where you learn, not just sitting in there by yourself or with one other coach.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying, based on what you hear about the time in Boulder, he spent a lot more time just working on football than his teammates, because he had to.
Yeah.
And so in the NFL, that'll be amplified. So I'm not trying to minimize the value of being
No.
And I think that you're right. It will probably take a while, because if I'm them, even though receivers catching the ball and putting it in the end zone is the toughest thing to do in the NFL, getting it in the end zone, that's the main goal. He can still come in as a corner, and there's a lot to learn there, but slowly start to figure out the rhythm of how do we use him as a receiver, versus if you're just working him in as a rookie receiver, that's going to take a while. Usually we can name all the good rookie receivers that have had enormous seasons, guys like Odell Beckham and Randy Moss, but it's not a very long list of 1,000-yard, 80-something catches, 8 touchdowns. That doesn't happen very often for rookie receivers. There's been rookie corners that have come in, PS2, Sauce, guys like that have come in and just played really well, especially if things are if you're on a defense that has other good pieces around you.
Yeah, if I was a coach and I got Travis, I would full-time corner, and then we're going to work our way into understanding how we can use you as a receiver. Once we know how you play with us as a corner, we're not going to split it up right off the bat and see, because then we'll never see where you are comfortable and how you digest it when completely involved in one side of the ball. I think whoever gets him is going to start him off at a corner, and then once he digests all that and can show that he's an every down guy there, then they'll find a way to work him in on offense, and it's going to be interesting to watch. All right, let's get into the fourth quarter. Legal tampering. What the hell is that?
So the other thing that goes on at the combine, and we covered this a couple weeks ago, but in addition to all of the stuff with the prospects and guys in the league talking to each other, and coaches and personnel people meeting people, are trying to potentially change jobs or find a lane. And there's some jobs that aren't all the way full. Like there are assistant special teams jobs open here and there, and a quarterback. There's some that are still open. And so that's part of it. But every organization has 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 representatives on the personnel staff, whether that's the capologist or the pro personnel guy or assistant GM or even the GM or the head coach, that meet with agents of your players. And that's really kind of you can meet with whoever you want, because they're not tracking your movement. But what often happens is you meet with an agent that reps your players, like Cortland's agent met with the Broncos. I don't think Cortland's going to hold out, by the way. It feels like there's going to be something coming, a new 2 or 3 year deal.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of the details on it, but that's the sense I get, is that he's going to show up for OTAs, be there in good. He's in town. I ran into him at the Nuggets game. I know he was at a friend's birthday party on Saturday, because I saw a picture of that, and PS2 was there. And so he's around, and that's a good thing. But when they sit with Cortland's agent, let's just pretend he has 2 or 3 free agents that are free agents to be, one on the Lions and one on the Packers. Well, they say, hey, by the way, I also have so-and-so, they were a good third corner, but they really need a shot to start. And at this number, or they weren't used right, and they're ready for a change. They didn't like the secondary coach. They don't like the scheme fit as a 4-3 end. They'd rather be a 3-4 stand-up linebacker. So those conversations also happen, which allows you, when you're there this week and you're with the team, to get into the framework of, okay, here are the free agents that we have listed at each position. We now know that this is going to be about the number. Let's start to figure out.
So when is the actual free agent period open?
The 12th is when the new league year starts. That's
right.
when contracts will be.
That's when you can sign a free agent.
You can sign a free agent. But that's also like if you have roster bonuses, if you're on the roster March 12th versus cut. Anyway,
right. But
yeah,
for the sake of adding new players and things like that,
they can fly in and sign a contract a week from Wednesday. they can start talking to agents officially, and we will hear.
But they've already started talking.
They've certainly already started. So
Mhm.
even though,
So why do they do this legal tampering period anyway? Because they know everyone's already talking.
just so that it's less offensive when at
On March 12th,
4 Eastern,
like,
2 o'clock, like, hey, Nick Bolton signs a new 4-year, $48 million deal with the Broncos or
But
whatever.
what do they expect? I mean, of course you're going to have to
Right.
talk. Like, of course you're going to have to plan. Of course you're going to have to cover all your angles and talk to everybody involved to understand if this is going to work out.
But I guess because it's out in the open, then players that are on franchise tags can go back to, and that's a little different. But teams want to be able to know, okay, I'm spending this much money, and you saw it actually pretty. One of the more exciting things about the Hard Knocks with the Giants last year was on the first day of free agency, and they're getting a tackle, and they're adding these pieces. Now they lost Saquon, but you're seeing them add pieces, and how it happens in real time, and you see the cap guy on with the agent or whatever it may be. And so I think that by having it in the open, then you start to know, okay, we're going to lose our guy to that team, or they're at least going to come back to us. But the conversations are more public, so there doesn't have to be any subterfuge. You can just be like, hey, we called the Eagles. They wanted this, or whatever it may be. Do you want to stay here with the Lions, or do you want to jump to the Eagles? Because the Lions aren't going to match it, but it's a better team. Eagles and Lions aren't a good example. Lions are Titans. Titans are going to give you $1 million more a year, and it's no state income tax, but the Lions are going to be a playoff team again for sure. So it just allows, I think, us to not be as fooled as the public. That how did at 401 there's 30 contracts already worked out.
Yeah. So what do we expect the Broncos are going to do?
I think they're going to look at a linebacker. I think that means Nick Bolton, Zach Bond, saw where Dre Greenlaw.
So that means someone's not going to be playing who was playing last year for the Broncos.
Cody Barton's a free agent.
So they're going to move on from Cody.
I think they're moving on from Cody. Justin Sternad, I think they'd probably like back as a depth play.
Special teams guy.
Sean Payton said he envisions Drew Sanders back inside.
You see, I think Cody Barton is better than Justin Sternad, or at least played better.
And maybe they bring Cody Barton back. I don't want to just
no. It's just you're in the know more than I am when it comes to talking to people over there. I think that
I don't know if they. Yeah, I don't know. Cody, I think is probably.
But Justin's been here longer, and they like him. They've seen him
a little faster.
Yeah, probably maybe a little more versatile of a special teams player.
Yeah,
as well.
And so either way, I think they'd want one of them back. I don't think they want both of them back. You have Alex Singleton coming off the injury, Drew Sanders. If they sign a linebacker, then that's probably not great for Alex Singleton. If they sign Nick Bolton or Zach Bond.
Isn't it weird how quick it changes? Because Alex Singleton, like
2 years ago, that's
damn near led the league in tackles. He was, I think, second in tackles. And his trajectory, the way he's kind of, I don't know. You got to respect the guy who's done it the way he has, right? And getting cut and finding a way to be amongst the most efficient tacklers in the league, in the world. And then he gets an injury and it's, we got to figure out someone else, another plan.
Right.
But if Alex Singleton, has proven this before, he can prove it again. Don't count me out, right? And so he's probably using this as motivation. But interesting. Okay, so a middle linebacker. Anyone else? I mean, there's some holes to fill. There's a running back. There's a tight end, maybe a safety. Are those things going to happen via the draft or free agency or both?
I haven't done a lot of digging on the free agent safeties that are out there. Someone like Justin Simmons is, but I just don't think there's a world where they're bringing back. Justin is back in town as well.
How do you know that?
He was he showed up in that same picture that Cortland and PS2 ran at my friend's birthday.
Yes.
But so the safety thing feels like it'll be addressed in the draft because they really like Brandon Jones, obviously, and he played really well. I think they like PJ Locke. They don't necessarily love him. That's why he's on a 1-year deal. So you have to decide, are you bringing him back?
Yeah. Kind of exceeded expectations as a special teamer who got the opportunity to start, but maybe they want to even upgrade that.
JL Skinner, I think they like his physical traits. We know that they like Devin Key. So if there's
I'll tell you one thing, JL Skinner's got to pull his socks up because as the uniform inspector, he will not pull his socks up and his pants go up here. I'm like, dude, I don't want to.
Does he get dinged or has he actually gotten fined?
I don't think he's gotten fined.
Yeah,
that's
it's like every time you're like, dude, every week. Yeah,
like whatever. I don't talk to him. I just write it down.
They're not your rules. You just make the rules. You're just doing a job.
And you know what's a little aside with the uniform stuff? Now that I watch games differently because I see things like these undershirts. These guys love their undershirts hanging out.
It's not a cool look.
It's not a cool look, but not only is it not a cool look, it can mess up a play. Like twice this season, a touchdown was prevented. A Broncos touchdown was prevented by the undershirts hanging out. The first one was little Jordan Humphrey. He was open in the end zone. The ball was thrown to him. He got his undershirt tugged. They didn't call it, and he missed the ball by about an inch because he got his undershirt tugged. Marvin Mims had a touchdown. He broke it down the left-hand sideline, got caught from behind with a tug on his undershirt. That's reason enough, isn't it? To not do the undershirt, guys?
Just go belly shirt. They're not getting anywhere near a belly shirt.
That's also a fine, though.
No, not with your jersey.
Oh, you're
Just
not
an
talking about
undershirt.
showing your belly button.
No, I'm saying undershirt that it isn't even a full t-shirt, that it's never going to get pulled.
Yeah.
That your pads are over, and then your nicely tapered jersey.
Yeah.
The amount of times that, you see a guy who's, even if it'll slow him down a little, won't be a game-breaking play, but their shirt gets stretched all the way. Like, well, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why are you wearing a shirt? Now it's 8 sizes too big and ripped.
Yeah, but it's like, it's a style. It's cool now for whatever reason, and the guys like doing it.
I looked up free agent safeties.
Yeah.
A lot of old guys.
Okay.
Javon Holland, who was an all-pro a couple of years ago with Miami. Cameron Bynum, who's not the oldest, but Hufanga with the Niners, who's a really good player, but he's coming off injury.
Yeah.
So maybe
I like that dude. He's good.
Justin Reed, really old.
Yeah.
Harrison Smith, even older.
You can get a young safety out there.
Trayvon Merrick from the Raiders is out there, and then Justin Simmons, really old. Jeremy Chin available against Steve Atwater's nephew. So
Jeremy Chin, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he certainly is around the ball. He's really good in Carolina.
Yeah.
He went to Washington last year. I think Washington would maybe want him back. And then running backs, it's Nick Chubb.
You want to go young with running backs. To me, Nick Chubb, who had that catastrophic knee injury, came back, of course. But you want to go young with running backs. Those guys,
unless Derrick Henry is the actual old back that you're
right.
But you're right.
Yeah. And then tight end, probably no one there. So this is going to be
Jawan Johnson from the Saints.
Yeah, this is going to be a draft sort of upgrade.
It's a really deep tight end and running back draft. The Broncos are lucky that the thing that they need. I know they met with 8 to 10 running backs and
what about
a bunch of tight ends.
Sorry to jump on you.
No, but that's who they met with. I mean, they know that running back and tight end is a deep draft.
Yeah.
And they'll find one of each. Yeah. Likely in the first few rounds.
What about a wide receiver? Because we talked about Deebo. Deebo's gone. He's to Washington. What about adding a veteran wide receiver to help this unit?
Well, you have a veteran wide receiver in Cortland Sutton. And you have little Jordan Humphrey, although
I think I mean a different type of receiver.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp. I know that he's not a free agent. It would have to be a trade,
no, you have to trade unless the Rams decide to cut him.
Yeah. But to me, he would be an excellent addition to the team, even though he has some injury issues and he's old, because of his ability to run every route in route tree, his work ethic, the type of production he's had. A great example for the young guys, and would take a little pressure off Cortland for being the only guy in that room who has that sort of experience. Cortland having to be the elder statesman all the time. Cortland having to be the guy who makes the big catch all the time. They need another guy.
He liked Tim Patrick to be his yin and yang. Tim's quieter. Tim's a great leader too.
Yeah.
And Tim was, the heart and soul of the team in a lot of ways in the offense.
Is Tim going back to Detroit? Is he signed a 1-year deal?
Yeah, I believe it was a 1-year deal. Yeah. So maybe it makes sense to bring Tim back. Cooper Kupp's interesting. I heard Sean McVay, he was on the radio this morning with Dan Patrick, and said that Cooper Kupp was a rookie, Sean's first year coaching, and said there's nobody that's been more important to our culture in terms of setting an example and what we wanted. And so then he just kind of hemmed and hawed about why he's going to move on from him, because cost and age and all that. But he will have all of those things. I just think if you have Cortland Sutton, he's not a necessity.
Yeah.
So if he were to get cut and you could work out a new deal, and I realize the bulk of the money's already been paid, so I don't hate it, but I just don't know if free agent, they have money to spend. It feels like linebackers where they're going to spend it at first and then just maybe save some of the rest and carry it over.
Yeah.
Or rework another guy, give Nick Benito his deal sooner than later.
Yeah. And we'll see where that joker comes from. Probably from the draft. It'd probably take a couple of years for him to really develop. But we got time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the goal here. Sean Payton hopefully probably be here for the next decade, win 3 Super Bowls, and then walk off into the sunset, right?
Great.
No big deal.
Well, just while you have Bo Nix on this rookie deal, you have 4 more years that you don't have to pay Bo.
Right.
And so even though they'll negotiate the deal and give him some cash, that'll all get kicked down the road on the extension. So you want to see them pick up where they left off. I know it doesn't work like that, but make the playoffs again, and then fill in the pieces, make sure Nick Benito and the guys that need to be set are set. And then next year, make a splash or 2 in free agency if there's a splash to be made. And I haven't paid attention at all to that class.
Right.
But you're going to have so much money that then you've got that couple-year window of like, okay, let's go now while we've got this rookie deal.
Speaking of free agency, let's put 2 minutes on the clock, Andy. I want you to convince me or make the case for the best free agent in the history of the Broncos, taking Peyton Manning off the list. Go!
What's funny is I thought about this question, and then I couldn't think of a player, but it's probably Aqib Talib because of what he did. It's a tie between Aqib and DeMarcus. They came in at the same time. DeMarcus's influence on Von Miller at that time in his life is as big a reason why Von Miller is going to be in the Hall of Fame. Because Von was at a true crossroads, at the off-field stuff with substance use and getting suspended. Then he tears his knee in Super Bowl 48, or doesn't play in Super Bowl 48 with the partial knee tear. But then Talib also for what he brought. So it feels like a tie between those two. And yes, Peyton Manning was here. Can you think of one that comes to mind, whether it was from
Ed
your time?
McCaffrey? That was a good one.
Ed was a good one because he helped lead the two. So because like John Lynch came in coming off an injury,
John Lynch,
4 Pro Bowls, but he didn't.
Yeah, Jake Plummer.
Snake was great. It's
And
not an easy conversation. Once you take Peyton off the list,
yeah,
you can make a good case for all those guys.
And Jake really only played for 3.5 years here and was 39-15. Pretty darn good.
Yeah, you'll take that.
Yeah, you wonder if you had, if stuck with them and things had been a little different, had that worked out different, because we did get to the AFC Championship game. We lost, but like typically that's not, in my opinion, the time to turn and run in the other direction. Maybe that means you're pretty close and the guys you're working with are pretty darn good. But Jake Plummer, who else? Yeah.
You look last year, value. I mean, recent years in the George Payton, Brandon Jones coming in and being as impactful as he was on defense.
Zach Allen.
Zach Allen, yeah, 4 years, 64. He's first, second team All-Pro. Have a hard time arguing against that in modern times, even more than Brandon Jones. They've hit on a lot. Their pro personnel department has done a good job, with John Elway and in that era, as well as kind of all the way through. There's not a lot of misses. Russ being a big miss, and what was the other one that
Randy Gregory.
Randy Gregory.
Yeah.
But Randy Gregory didn't surprise anyone. Russ being a big miss surprised us. That was a trade now. But in general, their pro personnel, I feel like, has done a really good job.
And you just did a really good job right there. Aqib Talib it is. Brandon Krisztal, thanks for the recap. Thanks for getting out there to Indy and representing Guerrilla Sports. And thanks for all the information that you bring us every single day here at Guerrilla Sports. My name is Nate Jackson. He's Brandon Krisztal. This has been brought to you by Trusted American Mortgage. Go check them out at trustedamerican.com. See how much they can save you today. That's it for us. We'll see you guys next time on Off Field. Bye now.